You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Adler and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is the Waystation, your source for Star Wars news and rumors, July 2nd, 2023. And although it was a bit of a lighter weekend in terms of the news, we do have some nuggets, and we had the hardest working person in Star Wars industry gathering all this information up for you. And he's here with us tonight. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight? Why are you shaking your head?
Because I was like, who is he talking about?
Yep, Set and Spike. Oh, it fell outside the line. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
I'm great. I got a chance to see Indy twice this weekend. Nice. I think it was better the second time, and we'll talk more about that later this week. So we're going to do a Patreon show talking about the Indy movie. But I'm still on an Indy high. There's still there was some really cool stuff in that movie, and I've really enjoyed it. But other than that, it's been a pretty boring weekend, to be honest. A lot of cleaning, chores, Star Wars stuff.
Actually, I've just got Rebels themes in my head all the time. Like I can't go to the kitchen without. Before I came on the show, you were like humming the Rebels theme, and I was like, I can't get it out of my head. We've been watching a lot, getting ready for from a certain point of view episodes that start tonight at 10 p.m. We're doing our top 3 moments from Rebels. So tonight is season 1. Next week is season 2. If you're not a Patreon yet, or even if you are, you haven't responded to the post, go out there and take a look at it. We're each 10 p.m. on each Sunday night in Central Time. We're going to share our top moments from that specific season all the way through season 4. So cantinacast.com/Patreon if you are really interested in that. And you could be like one of these amazing people that we have in our Patreon community, like our now part of the tribe members, Rob, Mike, Lauren, Dante, Risk, Justin, Jackson, Truckman, Dan, Daz, Isabella, Uncle Leon, Josh, Jacob, Steve, Reader Reborn, and our Illusions of Grandeur members, Rod, CJ, and in the chat tonight, actually, Mr. Alex. So thank you all for being Patreons. We certainly appreciate it. And in the chat tonight so far, Music Train, Jonathan Sky, Diamond Figs, and Alex. So appreciate y'all coming out. If you are curious about, if you like listening to the show and you like to watch it, we'd love to have you. So cantinacast.com/YouTube. You can go out there and subscribe. Like the video. Let us know that you like what you're hearing or what you're seeing. And then leave us a comment there as well. Just let us know what you think. And we'd love to have you part of the community, especially during the live stream. So thank you all very much.
Yes, it's been a very great time doing all the boring stuff I was talking about, but at the same time, like I'm listening to episodes and watching episodes and rewatching episodes. I mean, I've seen these episodes a billion times for Rebels, but we were just talking before we came on air. Season 1 in particular feels like it aged really well, and I think that's certainly a topic that I want to maybe tip our hat to a little bit at the very beginning of our show here at 10 p.m. But looking forward to talking about our top 3 moments, and we will have the honorable mentions. And this time, I'm coming in with a very short list of honorable mentions because I've gotten a lot of flack from.
I don't believe you. First of all, you're gonna have to quantify. You're gonna have to quantify what short means.
Yeah, that's true. I guess it's all relative. You know what? You're right. My list is pretty long, but I'm even looking forward to talking about all of the great moments from season 1, and then especially when we get into the next 3 seasons in particular. But okay, well. Where do you want to start this week on the news?
Yeah, maybe we'll talk about Essence Fest and really how we've not had anything. We were talking about Ahsoka, and we were really hoping, we were expecting to get something because we know there was a panel yesterday and maybe even today that, of course, Rosario Dawson is in New Orleans for the Essence Fest. And we reported this last week, and there's supposed to be some new snippet or something about Ahsoka that would have been part of it. But nothing has been released broadly online. Really, I couldn't find anything online, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. And I believe Diamond Figs, threw it out there in the chat already. Elon's a 600 tweet ration just to push back against the new Ahsoka trailer we were supposed to get today. So I'm not sure what the ration part is, but yeah, there was really a lot of people said trailer, but I don't know that was really a realistic expectation. But we expected to get maybe a new spot or maybe a sizzle reel behind the scenes, like something though. We did expect to get something. It has not surfaced at the very least because this was streamed, I guess, on Hulu all weekend. I missed that part that Hulu does this, but I don't subscribe to Hulu anymore, so I couldn't really tell you. But so a little bit disappointing there. We thought we'd get something to report and maybe be able to give you all a little snippet, maybe a little preview, but that hasn't happened. So again, we are still how far are we out? We are about 6.5 weeks or so still from
Yeah.
from the premiere, maybe close to 7 weeks. So still a long ways to go here, but how disappointing is this? Or it's like, no, I'm not worried about it. We got plenty of stuff, yet to come here through the mainstream media and mainstream Star Wars YouTube channel and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I think we're okay. I mean, it was probably aspirational at best to think that we would get a trailer. We said we wouldn't get a trailer because this isn't the forum to release a trailer at the Essence Fest, and no shade on that festival, but that's just not what they've typically done. So that would have been a curveball or something out of left field to do something like that.
It wasn't the primary point of their content for the last few days either,
yeah. And that's funny. I saw the trailer for the Haunted Mansion at its premiering. I think it's one of the final trailers before Indy 5, of course, because it's Disney.
Right.
And they only show her, like, Rosario Dawson's in that trailer all of like twice. So I don't know how big of a role she has. At least in the trailer, she wasn't featured very much.
I think she's the mom in the remake.
I know nothing about it, by the way. So
actually, this is the first. So when I saw Indy, it was the first time I'd seen the trailer as well, and I'm actually kind of interested in it. Compared to the Eddie Murphy version of it, this is pretty interesting. This seems to have a little edginess to it, and a little more, maybe not horror inspired, but a little grittier in that. So I was actually kind of interested. I was surprised by that.
Okay, so while we're on the topic, and because this is news and it's it's related to Rosario Dawson, I guess. But it's a ride, right? That's all it was? Was there something else? I mean, I know it's kind of, they did the first movie, and I remember that when it came out. I never saw that movie either, but what is the Haunted Mansion? Like, I hate to sound ignorant, but I have no freaking clue what that is.
So yeah, there's a Haunted Mansion ride both at Disneyland and Disney World, which are mainstays at both parks, and you have the hitchhiking ghosts, and you have all of these, the story behind it and everything else. So it's just one of these beloved rides, but everybody is dead in the mansion, of course. So
okay, so similar to what they did with Pirates of the Caribbean, where it was a ride forever, and everyone thought, how do you make a movie out of this? And yet somehow they made 15 or whatever that number is now. It's
been a really long time since I've remembered the backstory to see if there was something more to it than that. I should phone a friend and call my Disney expert friend, but. Yeah, I think it started off as a ride. There may have been something else behind it too, but it's been so long I can't remember.
All right. Well, Rosario Dawson's
I was not prepared for this question.
I know. I'm sorry. Trying to keep you on your toes here. But so getting back to the Essence Fest, I guess what I was saying was I got to see the trailer. We got to see her in it. It's great that she's doing movies. She probably hasn't done anything really big. This would be the biggest thing she's done in quite some time, I would guess. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it changes anything. We're so far out still that this really isn't the time that big media blitz starts, really, for this type of stuff. We're still probably about another, I don't know, maybe about 2 more weeks before we start getting anything. And then that final month, that final countdown is fast and furious.
Exactly. When you get to that final 4 weeks, things really start to pick up. Around 6 weeks, you start to see a little bit more. So pretty early still, but yeah, it's coming. Don't worry, folks. The media machine, the marketing machine is about to get ramped up considerably.
And I just checked right now. I'm sure you did as well, but there's nothing out there that's even mentioning the Ahsoka show, trailer, clips, nothing, interviews, nothing. So to be continued on that front.
Yeah, as soon as we hear more about it, we'll try to bring that to you all next weekend. Of course, if there was anything of note, we'll bring that to you, of course, as soon as we possibly can. In other news that's not really news, because that's kind of our thing lately, there's a Twitter post out there, and we'll link this in the show notes, but Ben Mendelsohn was basically interviewing Emilia Clarke, because they're both in Secret Invasion, the new Marvel show with Nick Fury, Sam Jackson, and company. And he kind of surprised her. He said, he is asking her if she would return to her role in Star Wars, and of course he's talking about Kira from Solo: A Star Wars Story. And there's a lot of, she kind of sidestepped it, not really sidestepped it. I think she got genuinely caught off guard by it and was like, "I'm in Marvel, I'm not allowed to." But I think some of the other comments that have come around this, though, clearly, and I think later on, Emilia Clarke, and maybe in a different forum, I have another link here, I'll link that in the show notes too, but basically came back and said, it doesn't really sound like it's a priority. Both of the Kasdans, John and Larry Kasdan, have both said Disney doesn't seem really interested in exploring these characters or anything like that, which of course makes sense from financially how the film did, regardless of how much we enjoyed it or not, financially it didn't do really as well as they had hoped. So not a lot of surprise that there's no energy here, but I thought I'd just pose to you, with some of the content that we've had for Kira, we've had War of the Bounty Hunters, Crimson Empire, Crimson Reign, and just some general interest in some of those forums. Is this something you'd want to see? Do you want to see Kira come back to the screen in some way, whether it be Disney Plus or a movie or something like that? And then what story aspect of that is most interesting to you?
I think, gosh, I want to be gentle here because she wasn't a character. She wasn't a character I particularly like. Was just over the moon about. I mean, I like the movie and I like what she did with the character, right? But I'm not as enamored as I guess other fans are, and not taking anything away from her character. It's just didn't click with me. And I know there are a lot of people out there because I mean, frick, they've done a whole bunch of comics now with her as kind of like this primary antagonist or protagonist, whatever your viewpoint is on that. What I would say, so for me personally, I mean, I'm not like pining for her to get back as Kira on the big screen, but I think something like Star Wars Outlaws would be kind of a nice way to bring her back into the Star Wars galaxy. She wouldn't necessarily do screen time. She could do the voiceover stuff and put her. I mean, it feels like she would be a natural fit for that game given the time frame and what's going on in that game. So that might be a new way to kind of ease her back into Star Wars before they just kind of go. I want to say cold turkey because she's already done a movie, but for most fans, it'd be like, whoa, they're bringing this character back. Why? You know, maybe there's something more there with the video game. You know, depending on how well that does. I don't know. Those are just kind of quick thoughts, but who knows? We'll see. What about you? I know you're probably a bigger fan of her than I am, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, a lot of the broader Star Wars community kind of feels the same way you do about Star Wars Outlaws. I think in particular with the game coming out is that it's kind of a prime real estate. There's a story already kind of there. You know, we know that she's got the criminal underground background and things like that. So this might be an opportunity. So there's lots of videos out there you can go watch and get speculation on some of that. And if we start to get wind that this is something that might happen, we might explore that a little bit more. But I like the character of Kira. I really like what they did with her in the comics. I think there were some really great stories there that I would love to see how they might be able to bring the character to life on the screen as much. I just have a hard time seeing how it fits, right? And again, right, wrong, or indifferent, and fair or not, Kira without like Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo, it's difficult to see if can you do Kira without Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo? I mean, the answer is yes, of course you can do that, but the dynamic between the characters, the unresolved things that happen from it, I know a lot of that happens in the books, but I think that would be really great for those two actors of Emilia Clarke and Alden Ehrenreich coming back and doing those characters and finding that story together. I think would be far more interesting than maybe a Kira standalone, or even if they were doing like a Crimson Empire, Crimson Reign type of thing, where they bring that story to the screen, which I think would be kind of tough to do. And again, you're smack dab in the middle of Empire Strikes Back and all that too, so a little bit challenging in that regard.
So you're saying more. You're saying, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you're saying more Solo 2 than a Kira standalone, essentially.
Yeah, to me that just seems a little bit more interesting. Or I'd rather stick in stay in the timeline of where they're at and just let Kira explore the underground with Darth Maul. But then it becomes more of a supporting role or a joint role with Darth Maul. And again, I think there's a story there too. I think when I look at the really strong story, it's probably more of that one of how she built, the Crimson Empire. I think that's their Crimson Dawn is the name of the organization. I think that's the really compelling, interesting story. How she took it over from Maul. It's almost this master apprentice scenario where the apprentice eventually, steps into the master role. We know what happens with Maul, of course, but I think that's the part that may be a little bit more interesting in that regard. Okay, so maybe another piece of news. We'll kind of shift over to some Kathleen Kennedy comments that she made about Dawn of the Jedi with James Mangold, and also trying to connect it to the New Republic. Now you might say, Albert, that's 25,000 years apart or something around those lines. I won't get too specific. How does that work, right? I think some of this is basically Kathleen Kennedy and James Mangold when they approached this film and then how it connects later on. She had this to say about it. She said, it was something that Jim Mangold immediately sparked to. And I think it's a really nice compliment to what we're doing with moving into the future with Rey and then understanding a bit more where this all comes from because it will be at the heart of creating the new Jedi Order. So to get a real sense of where that might have began with the Dawn of the Jedi would be pretty cool. So again, what she's really talking about, what's the premise of Dawn of the Jedi? Of course, this has a lowercase d for Dawn in her quote, at least from this outlet. And I forgot who this is from. Apologize. I'll have the link in the show notes, of course. But basically saying, what we learned from the beginning of the Jedi Order, which James Mangold, of course, also says we might even use the word Jedi, which would make a lot of sense actually, because they wouldn't know such terms yet. But when you're rebuilding the order, you have some connection to that way of rebuilding and having a fresh look on it and a fresh start of what did it mean? Why did it fall apart? Kind of like what we saw with Luke Skywalker's quotes a lot of times of what does it take to build this? And then what did you learn all the way back from the dawn of time, effectively, or the dawn of the Force in this regard from their perspectives of it? But it was just kind of an interesting quote. But anything else in there that you had read that was particularly interesting for you?
Well, I think there was other parts in there where they were kind of going back or maybe rehashing or saying some of the same things they had already said about Rey's movie, and it was done a little bit differently. Not that it changes anything there, but I think this is a natural kind of conclusion. I mean, maybe it's not. I mean, I guess they could have gone a couple different ways, but the idea that in essence, both films are dealing with this rebuilding or this building of a Jedi Order, building tapping back into the Force. I mean, by the time we get to The Rise of Skywalker, as far as we know at that point, we truly only have one Jedi left, which is Rey Skywalker, right? So maybe, Finn's going to be in there and there'll be other people as well, Broom Boy, whoever that is. But it's a very different landscape than when we got to where Luke Skywalker is, because we now know that there were a lot of Jedi that were just in hiding. By the way, season 1 Rebels did a good job of back in 2014 kind of planting that seed that, hey, right, there are a lot of them out there. We're just all in hiding for anybody that's got a problem with that, because I've seen a lot of posts here recently about, oh, he was the last. Oh, well, now there's 15 of them. Well, yeah, true, but that was Lucas's intent. Okay, anyways, there's similarities in the two being rebuilt. I think the connected tissue might be that, is she going to go back and rebuild the Jedi Order the way Luke Skywalker did? I think the answer is no. I don't see her doing that. I don't see her going and following in his footsteps and saying, well, it worked for you, I'm just going to do the same thing, because clearly it didn't. And she's not going to go back to the Jedi Order of the prequel trilogy, because I don't think that worked either, right? So she's going to have to go back further. When was the last time this thing was really gelling and working? And I'm not even going to throw the High Republic in there, because I think there's probably I'll probably come back to that after we get through Phase 3, because I think Phase 3 is going to show us and expose some of the shortcomings of the Jedi Order in that era. So at some point, she's got to go back and say, when did this thing really work? And what were the origins? And what were the roots of being a Jedi and being in balance with the Force? And right, all these all these fundamental questions that we have about the Jedi Order and the Force, I think will be answered in some particular era. And I can see her going back and saying, hey, this worked then, I want to do something like that, or modeling it after that. And maybe there's some connections there to when it was first stood up, right, that we'll get to from James Mangold's movie. So whether they intended this or not, I don't think that's probably the case, but I do like that there's some synergy there between the two movies in that regard.
Yeah, I think anytime you can connect the movies in various ways, even if they're really small pieces, I think that's important. I think for Star Wars now, especially we're in this period of reinvention of Star Wars, I think. And whether we know it or not, I think that's where we're at, right? We've got to reinvent what these movies look like and what they feel like, I think in particular the movies, in order to bridge this gap and to bring in a new wave and kind of a new era of Star Wars on the big screen in particular.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be important to do, to at least make them feel like they belong. They can still be Star Wars, but tall order in this one, because, I mean, you're talking 25,000 years apart. So that's quite the gap. Okay. Let's move over to the television front. So if you didn't know, we reported this a couple weeks ago, but Disney Gallery, The Mandalorian Season 3 is now out on Disney+. So for those that might not be as familiar with this content, this is the behind-the-scenes look. The Disney Gallery basically does behind-the-scenes look of some of the bigger shows and the more important shows, or I guess the flagship shows, however you'd like to quantify that. And, of course, they've done this with The Mandalorian before. I believe they did it with Obi-Wan Kenobi as well. So I think these are really great episodes if you like going behind the scenes. Seeing the behind-the-scenes discussions, seeing kind of how the soup is made of sorts, and going that route. Is this something you've watched yet, or something you plan on watching?
I have not seen this yet. I've seen in my Twitter sphere, the people that I'm close with, they've all seen it and commented and loved it. So I heard it. It's really nice and it's got some good stuff in there. But again, nothing. You're not going there for any secrets or anything like that. It's just it's pulling back the curtain and really getting to see the fun that they have and what that looks like behind the scenes. Surprisingly, I don't know there's a lot of Pedro Pascal in there, because I think he, for the most part, had a voiceover role in season 3. That's really starting to come to light even more. I think it was rumored at first that he really wasn't there much at all. And then as the season went on, then right after season 3 was over, there was a lot of discussion around that. So,
but again, if you like that aspect of it, you like to have the well-rounded approach of what did it take to make it? What are the things you didn't know behind the scenes? There's always little interesting tidbits in there. Again, not necessarily story wise, but where they were coming from, why they did what they did. These are really great insights into it, especially if you like I like the technology aspect, like the actual movie making, if you will, part of these. I think I always find that really interesting of what goes into it. And because it's such a complicated production, it's really cool to be able to see some of that come together and how an idea sparks, from someone's mind and from a room of people into what we actually see on the screen. I always find just a fascinating journey of how that works. So these do a great job. Disney always does a great job of producing these. We're not being paid to say that. They just do. Like their behind the scenes stuff is really top notch, like you would expect. So strongly recommend people to go out there and check that out if you are interested in Mandalorian or if you're interested in kind of behind the scenes look.
Yeah, well, they record everything these days too, so they have tons of footage to work with, and that usually is one of the key ingredients of coming up with really good behind the scenes type, content like this.
Absolutely, yeah. They've always got somebody basically interviewing of sorts that can be used for just a brief comment to be able to slip in, and you get some context that maybe it didn't make sense in the moment, but now you can put it together and kind of build another story around the story, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
In other TV news, and this is more of this is an Instagram story that I saw briefly and then is not there anymore because Instagram stories disappear after like 12 minutes or something stupid. Anyway, but I'm not an Instagrammer, so I don't really know this stuff. But they go away quickly after a couple days.
24 hours. 24 hours.
There you go. Split the difference. And so, but anyway, so Michelle Long apparently hinted that all of the voice parts have been laid down and recorded for Bad Batch Season 3. So again, when you're looking for milestones in production, for voiceovers, that's a big part of it, right? So they've got the script is done, they've got the actors in the studio, that's recorded and done. They'll usually come back and do some quote unquote reshoots and things like that as the animation continues to go through and the music and all that good stuff. So again, kind of another important milestone in the Bad Batch Season 3 production that it is progressing. We haven't really talked about this at all. There hasn't really been any news about how the Writers Guild strike impacted Bad Batch. So this is great that it wasn't impacted at all, which makes sense because they started this a while back. But pretty good news there. And again, nothing really to speak about it, but just encouraging news that this is continuing forward.
Yeah, the big milestone is going to be when D. Bradley Baker's done recording his lines because he has like 90% of the dialogue every episode. Now that's when you know it's getting close.
That is a legit comment because I don't think she made comments. Well, I don't know if hers were inclusive of his or just hers.
Okay. I took it as hers, but yeah.
It's lopsided, when you're voicing 3/4 of the 80% of all the characters on the show.
Right.
All right. So speaking of other shows, Skeleton Crew, we had talked a couple weeks ago about how Skeleton Crew was oddly a little bit quiet, especially since we still don't really have a firm release date on it and still don't know a lot about it. Well, here's the good news is that we still don't know a lot about it. But there was Entertainment Weekly and their Dagobah Dispatch podcast, again, kind of coming through with more Star Wars news this week. Of course, it's Dagobah Dispatch, it's supposed to be, but this has Chris Ford and Jude Law as part of the show. And I think one of the interesting tidbits that I pull from this is this quote from the article. So this is quoting EW here. We'll have the links in the show description, of course. It's that balance between light and dark, talking about the show itself, just in general. Much like the Force itself, that Law, Jude Law, believes that Law. I'm sorry, this is reading this is really tough within the context there. So it's that balance between light and dark, much like the Force itself, that Law believes will propel the show forward. Jude Law. And this is quoting Jude Law now, because it's through their eyes, he says, of the younger characters. At times, there's a sort of goofy nature and a goofy relationship between the kids and the adults. And then other times, it's really quite dark and quite scary, which I guess is what the world probably looks like to an awful lot to an 11-year-old, end quote. So again, they've talked a little bit about this before, especially with Jude Law's representation of the character, and sometimes the younger actors think he's mad or something, but he's trying to get them to refocus of no, this is a really serious moment. But this dichotomy that is going on between them, that this youthful rose-colored glasses of kids is also inspiring in some ways, and it lifts you out of, even though it's serious and they're just being kids, there's a part that lifts you out of that to an extent, right? And I didn't really see anything in the article or in the podcast that were really super new, but it was nice just to get a little bit of Skeleton Crew background and just a little more insight of what's going on in Skeleton Crew, because I think this is a show that when you look at the slate of content that's coming, we still know so very little about, and I'm kind of worried in that respect that they're not doing enough to get people on board with what this is. But again, if this isn't coming until November, December, which is kind of what we think it's probably going to do, really end of the year stuff, a lot of time to come. But to me, as we get into Ahsoka, I think we need to start ramping some of that up to get at least an inkling about what this show is going to be and why people need to tune in. Because I think the normal media blitz of 4 weeks, 6 weeks out may not be enough for a show like this to perform pretty well.
That's an interesting thought. I would agree. I think principally I would agree that because you're introducing something new, I mean, it has the star power of Jude Law, so there's something to be said about that. However, I think you're right. There probably needs to be something there. Now, we might be in this kind of quiet, silenced era of Skeleton Crew leading up to it because, one, they're probably going to want, well, we know this, they're going to want to get through some, if not all of Ahsoka before they even start pulling that. But you're right. They need
Absolutely.
to, and the reason why they may not be ramping it up so hard yet is because we don't know how much of what's in Ahsoka could be connected to Skeleton Crew, right? It'll be a very different, so assuming Ahsoka gets very popular and does really well with the ratings, there could be moments in there where key characters, key events are then highlighted in the promotional stuff that they do for Skeleton Crew, right? Just to kind of tie it back. So they might be doing this intentionally. That wouldn't surprise me. We've seen this done with other television shows. I'm trying to think if it's ever been done with Star Wars. Probably not, but definitely in other programs that are connected like this, they've done something very specifically, exactly the same way. The other thing about this article that I think this bodes well, like this very much lines up when we did our Skeleton Crew breakdown. We had talked about, there was another quote that Law had done with Entertainment Weekly along the same line, saying that, hey, it's kind of a balance. There's some good and there's some light. You know, there's a balance there. I think we are going to get kind of this gray character, not great Jedi, but just gray character who is, you know, probably maybe not on the up and up, but still was a Jedi at one point, and he's just trying to make his way in the galaxy, right? You know, that's how I'm picturing him because he does kind of look like a bum half the time. But the other thing this does really well, or bodes well for, is the idea that we're getting a very similar tone or experience with like a Goonies movie, right? Where it's a bit goofy at times. Well, that movie's goofy a lot of times, but the relationship with the kids and the adults were always there. There's, you know, he says it's quite dark and scary at times. I mean, I don't know that it's scary and dark to 11-year-olds. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But if you think about the Stranger Things and you think about other movies that were made during this era, that mixture of having lighter moments and darker moments and really scary moments and very deep and emotional moments, that's the stuff that really resonates with kids because you get that wide spectrum of emotions. And I think it resonates with us as adults because we remember what that was like. So you take all that, throw it into Star Wars, and I think they've got the ingredients here for what I think we're all hoping for it to be, right? To say that this is going to be a Goonies / Stranger Things kind of in space, there's some pretty big shoes to fill. So I think we've got some expectations, and it sounds like this is kind of those beginning inklings of that.
Yeah, that's a great point. We really need to see what Ahsoka brings to the table to see how this ties in and what other nuggets are they starting to lay? What's that path, that breadcrumb trail start to look like that ties us into Skeleton Crew? Yeah. Especially coming on the heels of it later this year. And again, keep it in context. It's the beginning of July when we're recording this. You know, this isn't expected to come out for almost 4.5 months, 5 months almost. So, or maybe just a little bit longer. So, I mean, again, there's a lot still to come, a lot of runway here. Not expecting a lot. So, also in the EW Dagobah Dispatch train is that they released another excerpt for Inquisitor: Rise of the Red Blade, which of course is the novel coming out by Delilah S. Dawson here. That the embargo lifts this week on July 5th, so that's really exciting. We'll be able to start sharing some of this. Lauren's got a video coming up here on this too. But basically, and they've also got an audiobook excerpt as well. I did not get a chance to listen to the audio excerpt, but this has Iskata Karas, who's the main character in this, who of course is in the Jedi Order at the time of this, but she has an interaction with Mace Windu and has a chance meeting with Chancellor Palpatine at the time. So I think what's really important what's interesting about this excerpt is the seeds of how Palpatine was growing the Inquisitors. Because I think we're all kind of under the assumption that Iskata is the one that's becoming the Inquisitor in this book. I don't know if they've come out broadly and said that, but I think that's the intent. This is the character, and she goes through this journey. But I think this is also interesting from an aspect of Palpatine and how he was identifying Force sensitive and when those who weren't unhappy, and some of the things that we saw with his interactions with Anakin are very much on display here. This warm fatherly figure of understanding and, giving empathy where the Jedi lack it, especially Mace Windu, because he's kind of a jerk half the time. So at least half the time. So it's a nice dynamic there. The excerpt itself didn't have anything revolutionary or revelatory really in it, but it was just more of the tension between the main character and the Jedi Council, but also here you are with Palpatine, chance encounter, and he's the one to kind of bring you and have that soft landing and someone that you might go back to because you start to trust him. So interesting excerpt there from that book. Okay. Go ahead.
I was going to say, we can't say anything about the book as of today. I will say it's pretty good, and I'm almost done with it. It was not where it's going to go. But the one thing that I will say to tease up the book, you have to buy the book. I don't know if they're going to include it in the e-copy. In the electronic arcs that we got, it wasn't in there. And I don't know. Have you done the audiobook yet? I'm talking about Okay. So what I'm talking about is the foreword in there by Delilah S. Dawson. If you get a chance, you have to read that. It almost made me cry. I'm not even kidding you. So, and that's all I can say about it. It's relevant to the book, right? So I don't want to. I can't say anything, but it's relevant to the book.
Is this about like the sensitive themes and things like that?
Yes, yeah, but it's from her. It's her writing it, right? It's her words and not.
I think this was actually already released to the public.
Okay.
We had talked about it a few weeks ago. Yeah, there's some sensitive things in there about what this addresses, but yeah, definitely you want to go and research that and pull that up because it is a really powerful message. I think that she lays out there.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
All right. Last but not last. Yeah, we have one little extra one here, but we did get a few covers for the October Wave 8 release or editions of what is coming in the Essential Legends collection. So these are the books. If you're familiar, they re-released some of the books from Legends they think are dubbed Essential, right? That are really important. And of course, Drew Karpyshyn is super popular. He wrote the Bane trilogy and things like that. So, and a lot of Old Republic. So here he is with Annihilation, which is the Old Republic as well. And they get a fresh coat of paint with the covers here with the art, and it looks absolutely stunning. But we've got 4 books here and I think Albert's actually looking for his.
I was trying to find the Annihilation. I can't see it, but that's way better than no offense to the original ones, but that one's better.
I've got it around here somewhere too. Yeah, the original one was very classic Star Wars of the era. Big and bold, kind of in your face, not near as artistic as this is, but I mean, really, really cool. So we got 4 covers here. So here's Annihilation, the Courtship of Princess Leia, of course, by Dave Wolverton, which a lot of people love this book. But we've got.
I did not like that book. Sorry. Okay. Not sorry, but
it wasn't really for me. This is probably my least favorite of the covers. It has Leia on the front, dressed in more wedding regalia, I guess you could call it. But again, a very beautiful representation of Leia, though. And then we have I, Jedi, but of course by Michael A. Stackpole, who of course Michael Stackpole did a lot of the X-Wing Rogue Squadron books and comics and things like that. So kind of essential here, but a great, kind of a great establishing shot here of a Jedi character overlooking a temple of some sorts. I did not read this book, so this is one I'm not.
It was good.
With.
I like that one.
This is very early on. This is very early Legends, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is like OG type stuff here. And then finally, and this is more up my alley. True Colors. So this is book 3 of the Republic Commando series, but we have a clone commando hauling his fallen comrade down over his shoulders with a giant explosion behind him. Fantastic cover here. Of course, Karen Travis is the author here. This is some of my favorite books. It was funny after the show. When was it? I guess that was Thursday.
Yeah.
Yeah, Thursday. We were all kind of chatting, and your power went out. But I told Lauren, I was like, I'm actually nervous because this is on her slate of books to go and read and.
I know, and you've hyped it up, so
I have, and I'm like so nervous because I need like Lauren's approval almost. I think now I'm dependent in this kind of way. I'm like do I remember these books right? Do I? But I mean, clearly they're good because we are getting the Essential Legends treatment, and I'm not saying that all of these books are 99 out of 100 type of ratings. They're all A pluses, and I mean sometimes they mean more to one person than another, which I think is cool, the smattering that we get. But the Republic Commando series, they did such an amazing job with the culture and everything behind these. I'm hoping, and I know we've got some listeners out there that love these books as much as I do. So I'm excited when Lauren reads them. I'm going to go reread them at the same time just to just to see if I still have the same thing. But this is a really cool. This is a great cover. The last Republic Commando reissue or the Essential Legends collections they released, the cover was kind of okay. But this one's back to like really dynamic, a lot of energy, explosion behind, and a lot of oranges and browns and colors, and you get the stark of the white Republic Commando armor there in the front. Just fantastic framing up here. So really cool, really cool cover. All right. So, and we'll have so thanks to the, if you're over on Twitter at SW Books, so the Star Wars Books and Comics Twitter account, have lots of great info out there all the time. So please do go give them a follow. They do a great job of keeping up with this stuff, and they bring it to you really timely. So definitely we'll link them in the show notes as well, give them a credit. And that's where a lot of these photos I was able to go and get to really, really quickly. And they are always on the money and a lot of great content over there. So last but not least, Albert, we had talked about this. Where the hell is Star Wars Eclipse? Well, you're still going to have to wait for it. So there's still no official release date. Apparently the developer behind it, this is Quantum, who is the name of the name always escapes me here, Quantic something or another. Quantic Dream, there we go. So Quantic Dream, of course, has been just riddled in all sorts of problems. They have a toxic work culture, really crunch time environment, which is a huge thing in the gaming industry and then I think technology in general. And then, of course, a lot of references to sexual harassment in the workplace, really serious allegations going on in that entity. A lot of them are still going on. And there's a lot of rumors about, or I guess there was a Chinese company trying to buy them over. So for this game, internally, I think they're saying they have a target of 2026. And we'll have a link in the show notes of where this is coming from. This is coming from Gaming Insiders or Insider Gaming, rather. Sorry, I got that backwards. But I got to be honest with you. I don't know that this if this game comes out, period, I'll kind of be surprised.
That's where I was shaking my head. I was like, I mean, we've seen this so many times with different other publishers and Star Wars games. It's just, I mean, they did a good job with the trailer, right? That got everybody excited, and they made it very clear this is not game footage. So, it was a cool little reel. But beyond that, I mean, this thing, as far as I'm concerned, is never coming out. They'll prove me wrong, I'm sure, at some point, but to say 2026, that feels about right where they're at right now. They've got a lot of other problems that have nothing to do with programming.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to remember is that this was a game, I think we originally got this in 2022, right? The first announcement. That's 4 years. And this game was set during the High Republic, I believe was the general time frame. So not knowing a whole lot about it, but seeing this really kind of an epic trailer in some ways. I mean, the energy they got behind it with the drums and some of the imagery was really spot on. Mm-hmm. I get really worried about games that come out like that and they give you some sort of establishing moment in time, even though it wasn't game footage. And if it doesn't come out for 4 or 5 years afterwards, what kind of relevance does it still have?
Yeah.
The High Republic by 2026, at least what's been defined of what we know, it will be done, right? It will be over. I'm sure it'll be something else at that point, so not to discount that, but you have to wonder about the relevance of this. Like even when you look at the game engine and the development side of it, has it gone on too far to where it doesn't look like a good game anymore? Now, granted, I know that's super subjective, and really how good games look, they all look ridiculously good for in a lot of ways. So the gameplay is kind of most important. The story is most important. But I get really worried about how well this is going to age through the process to where it seems like the story is even relevant, or that it's something that we even want, or it just feels like a game that they release because they have to. But I think with the brutality that we're seeing in the Disney Plus space, as far as cutting content and really having an eye that says we are willing to continue investing in this or that from the Disney front, this is a game that, with all the other games they've had going on, and there are certain games you still don't hear anything about that were supposedly in development. Like, I just don't see how this one actually survives, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it going away and nobody caring, quite honestly. In fact, I know there are a lot of people that would be happy that this game never came out. But that said, you're right. Like 4 years from now, I guess it's 3 years technically at the earliest. Even if it goes 4 years, 5 years, you're right. There is some kind of a expiration date on the graphics and what they look like and how that plays into it. The worst, most egregious example that comes to mind is a game called Daikatana, which was supposed to come out by John Romero around the time that he was making, I think it was Quake and all those games. And that game got delayed after there were so many delays. And It's a very fascinating history about what happened with that game. But long story short is it finally came out like 6, 7 years after it was supposed to come out, and it looked terrible because we were so well beyond what that game was supposed to look like. That aside, though, I'm sure they can figure that. You're right. Like, it was very clear when this game was announced that the current writers, at least for the High Republic and the current storylines as they were planning out phase 2, phase 3, were not working with these guys. And so that in itself tells you it's going to be a standalone story. So you're not going to be able to ride the coattails of the content that's being written right now. So you're really kind of making this Star Wars story that is set in a time era that, let's just be honest, a lot of people are not familiar with, right? The general audiences are not familiar with. And you're going to take a chance on telling a very original story because I don't know that you're going to be able to tie it back into a lot of the content that's already out because you didn't work with them. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. So it does feel like there's a lot of things just going against them. It feels like they're swimming upstream on this one by themselves. But, you know, stranger things have happened. And certainly we've seen other games that have kind of gone through a lot of this stuff and have released. Some have done well, some have not done well. Most have not done well. But, you know, we'll see. I don't until they actually have a game trailer, game footage, and we know that they're in pre-alpha testing and, you know, people have got their hands on it. A lot of these games, honestly, and it's not indicative or exclusive to Star Wars, but it's just vaporware at this point until we get closer and get something more substantial. But it is fun to talk about. Like, they did a banger of a trailer. I will give them that. I really got excited about the trailer they released.
And they did. So we'll see where it goes. And again, like you said, it's not uncommon for games to start down start the process and go through it, and then eventually, you know, this just isn't working. We need to cut our losses, and we go a different direction. But when you put out a trailer, kind of a big deal. And again, this company had a lot of other things, not like they were just the culture of the shop, and that's a problem, right? You can't get people to work there now, or it's very difficult. And once you've had that stigma attached to you, it's really difficult, even if you're making all the right strides to do the right thing and make the right changes. Getting people to want to work for you, and then you had a takeover at the same time, you know, it's really, really tough. And it's a long slog of a process. And to have a major property like Star Wars that you know you really can't screw up, or you like from a business standpoint, like, I don't screw this up. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of pressure. And I can imagine that some are sensitive to that. Hey, let's get your culture right. But at the same time, you need to get this movie out because you guys are bleeding cash on this stuff. And so everything's stacked up against it, so I'm not really positive. But again, this is maybe an opportunity where if you have a story, if you have something that is, you know, something that's workable, maybe this is something that could be sold or moved to a different studio if this isn't working out, or if the studio collapses, or whatever might actually happen right in the long run. I don't know if the studio collapsed, but you know, but maybe that's something that could be bought and then moved elsewhere if there's something really worth keeping there and worth retaining that story aspect of it, because again, there's a lot of rights involved with all this stuff. But anyway, but it was the first time we had any kind of news on it in a while, so I thought we'd bring that up. Again, we'll have show notes we'll have links to all of the sources that we had in the show notes in the description, so please do go take a look at those. But yeah, kind of that's it, really. That's it. Kind of a light week here.
Yeah, it was a light week. I mean, we made the most of it, I think. There was certainly some talking points in here. So.
If there's something we can do, it's talk about nothing and talk about it a lot. Yeah.
That's what you're here for. We understand and we appreciate that. So, you know who we also appreciate is everybody that came out for the live stream tonight. And who were those people?
I like how your mind works with segues, my friend. Yeah, Music Train, Jonathan Sky, Diamond Figs, Dale, Steph. Thank you all for coming out. And Alex. Sorry, Alex is in there too. So thank you all for coming out. We see you folks in the background. We appreciate you showing up as well. We invite you to comment and chat in the chat, of course. If you are listening to this, please go out to cantinacast.com/YouTube. Subscribe to the channel to notify when we go live, 9 p.m. Thursdays and Sundays for kind of our main show and for news. And then after that at 10 p.m. we have an exclusive Patreon show for our Patreon members. So Thursdays, usually that is our Tatooine trading post or whatever's kind of relevant at the time. And then Sunday we have a spotlight episode. So tonight in our spotlight episode, we're actually going to have Dante come on from our Patreon community. And the three of us are going to talk a little Star Wars Rebels and share our top 3 moments from the first season. So pretty exciting stuff there.
Yeah, and this is all part of the ramp up to the Ahsoka series. So we're going to hit you with one of these top 3 moments from seasons 1, 2, 3, and 4 over the next 4 weeks. And then we've got other stuff as well. So yeah, I'm excited. Like I'm giddy to talk about Rebels because, you know, I kind of like that show a little bit. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
I really enjoyed watching this. I didn't remember how much I enjoyed. I didn't really remember enjoying season 1 a whole lot. I had a lot of mixed emotions about it, but now looking back, I'm like, oh, yeah, it's done pretty well. So we'll talk a lot about it tonight. So if you're curious, yeah, cantinacast.com/Patreon. Check out the membership tiers there. The video starts at this is the way tier, the $5 tier and up. So if you are curious and want to watch us talk about it, we'd love to have you. And that also gives you an exclusive link to the live stream as well that you can click and follow along and join us just like you do on the main show here. So we would invite you over to check that out if you are so inclined. We would certainly appreciate the support.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks everybody again for coming out for the live show. Thanks for tuning into this on your favorite podcasts or on YouTube. And if you're a Patreon member, we'll see you just in a few minutes here to talk about Rebels. If not, we'll see you guys here back on Thursday.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.